with their letterhead, and the employer's gonna look like, okay, come on through. Here's 150.
Measure GS. Measure GS Resident Oversight Committee meeting of Santa Monica, California, December 1st, 2025.
And they're like, oh, okay, we're not hiring anybody in this job. 15 years ago.
I'm just waiting for a couple more people.
Send it to me, they're like, the top MBAs can't even get a job. It was started at 270 for that. But it's a different.
Are we gonna wait a while, or we?
No, we're just giving them a minute or two. I think it's 6:05, we're starting. We're here.
I heard the same, I heard it was at the same time. Certain positions that it's like hard to fill, like engineers, basically step.
Everybody all set?
Yes.
Okay, we'll order meeting. Santa Monica Measure GS Resident Oversight.
All right. So roll call, we have Mark Bertler. Present. Renee Buchanan. Not present. David Goldsman.
President.
Anusha Prakash. Not present. Wade Kelley.
Present.
Milan Ramsey. Not present. Sam Shapiro-Klein. Not present. Bruce Wessel. Vice Chair Amy Anderson. And Chair Mike Sullivan.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We'll begin on public input on non-agenda items. We have one member of the public who's busy speaking to the city manager at the moment.
Nothing was submitted.
Heather, do you want to say anything
I'm
on
sorry.
non-agendized items, or the only member of the public?
I'm not, I just,
Okay.
just here.
So next, we're on public input, agenda items under special agenda items, and consent calendar. Do you have any comments on those?
No comment.
Okay. So now we're on the special agenda item 3A, City Manager Introduction Committee. We have with us Oliver Chi, the City Manager. Oliver, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to come say hello. I apologize if I haven't been here sooner. I've had a chance to meet a lot of folks in town, but not with all of our committees and commissions yet. And so just wanted to come introduce myself, say hello, and thank everyone for your work on the committee. This is a issue near and dear to my heart, but an important issue in Santa Monica. How do we make sure that we're doing things to protect our tenants and our renters here in town, and the funding that all can help us really manage and think about how we're going to utilize such an important part of what makes Santa Monica great. So I really just wanted to come introduce myself. Thank you for your service, and let you know that we're absolutely here to help facilitate. I know there's a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs that the committee would like to see move forward a little bit more quickly. We're definitely talking internally, how do we do that, meet the expectations of this group and the community with consultative role, helping the city with some of the homeless prevention activities and homeless response activities in town. What we are excited to do in January, we're going to be welcoming our new director coming to us from New York. She is going through a big life transition right now. She just got married. She's moving from New York back into the Santa Monica area. Her husband actually grew up in Venice. And interesting fun story, her husband grew up next door to our deputy city manager, Peter James. And so we're super excited about this transition. January 12th, right, I think is the official date that transition will be occurring. We're excited to introduce her to everyone in the community here.
Where are you going?
Oh, I'm still here.
Oh.
I'll just be, right now I'm the acting director, but I'll just be returning to housing manager.
Oh.
So I'll still be here.
Are you taking any questions tonight?
Happy the chair will allow.
I think as long as it's legit, I think it's on the agenda, go right ahead. I do want to say that Oliver has been tremendous. I think he made himself available. So whether you ask questions tonight or making an appointment to meet with him, I'm sure he'd be interested in speaking with you. But go ahead and ask him.
Well, I just thought, since you were here, you would be the person to ask. Hi, my name is Wade.
You too.
We found recently the only money that's been spent out of the has been spent on the HPI, homeless prevention manager. Is that correct? That's the only money that's been spent by the fund so far.
I think it's one person, I don't know the title.
Okay, I asked Thomas to send me the information. And if I'm not incorrect, the manager's overseeing things that are outside of our scope and not compliant with what we're trying to do, especially the Samo Bridge, which I really dislike. It persecutes homeless people and gets people off the street by giving them a choice between jail or some other program. And it's something I dislike, and I also think I've been told it's outside of what, I've been asking questions about this, and I've been told over and over that that's outside of our realm. And so, my question is, if we didn't defund that manager's job, if the city council didn't defund that job, how would it be to transition that job to manage the Measure GS fund, the Measure GS tax, and to make sure that things are working in compliance with what we're supposed to be doing, and finding ways to get the money out there more quickly and appropriately and effectively?
No, it's a great question. A couple of thoughts to that. One, you're echoing what Bruce has been encouraging and exhorting us to do. It's been almost 3 years since the measure was approved. I think we collected $33 million to this point in time.
Exclusive of the money to schools. So it's a 30 million term.
And why haven't we been able to launch the programs?
And I know before you were here, but yeah.
It's our collective responsibility to figure out that pathway. What I can tell you is the team at the city right now is actually learning more about the operation. So many different things. How do we align it so that we're getting maximum value with developers? And how do we make sure that we're providing financial support in a way that's thoughtful and logical, that doesn't get anyone sort of in trouble, and is actually helping in the way that was intended. Sometimes it's harder to create that kind of infrastructure. It can be frustrating at times, not necessarily because of the housing staff, but we have a lot of internal efficient, to this point, maybe some of that frustration. I personally have a lot of sympathy for Natalie and the team. It's been trying to work through the systems we have that have been creating some of the delay. That being said, everything is ahead of schedule with a couple of the key programs that Measure GS is going to fund. Maybe Natalie can give an update on the timeline for some of those deployments right now. The point that was made related to Salmon Bridge, I know there's feelings about diversion-related program. Salmon Bridge is a grant-funded program from the state. We're not using Measure GS funding for the program directly. I'm not clear on the person that is being funded with the money. If they have an oversight role, but Salmon Bridge is being run day-to-day by the city attorney's office right now. So there's a criminal unit uses as a diversion program and little prosecution for misdemeanor type violations. So I don't think we're using any GS money for that.
Well, that is under the heading of the manager's oversight, what she's
No.
managing.
The HPI manager, who's Allison, she doesn't oversee the San Michelle Bridge. She does oversee the homelessness prevention and intervention division, which is overseeing implementation of the Right to Counsel program, which is a measure program.
Okay, well, it says on there, I mean, it says on the HPI list of what things that manager is overseeing.
It doesn't seem, at least I'm sorry, maybe I'm not understanding the question correctly, but it seems like what Wade is trying to get to, the point is that a person, doesn't matter who it is, this FTE is funded by this particular measure, but the responsibilities of that particular individual seems to be spread to 10 other things. And there has to be a way to subdivide the budget. It's fine that this measure pays for a portion, let's say 2 hours a day of this person's work, they work on Measure G. That makes sense. But for it to be a full-time Measure GA based on the responsibilities of this individual, that doesn't. If that could be subdivided accordingly to this particular individual's responsibilities, that would seem to be more sound to me. And correct me if I'm saying something that is incorrect or unreasonable of an ask.
No, I don't think any of the comments are unreasonable. I think the job description of our own prevention manager, Allison is spectacular. We could have her come maybe to a GS meeting and just
She came.
She has come. And Thomas, could you correct me if, I mean, that is one, under one of the divisions of her job, of the manager's job of that.
I
You
haven't
sent
read,
it-
I haven't read her job description recently. I may share that with you.
You sent that to me,
We can delve into the specifics
Yeah.
of this one, but the basic point,
Basic point.
which Wade and Gary or David are making, which is correct in my mind, is an interpretation of statutes. The money, whoever's time is paid for, is going to be working on projects, they're being funded by Measure GS.
Yep.
And so if this is no knock on any individual or anything else, but if 20% of their time is on that, then it's fine for the Measure GS fund to pay 30% of their compensation, but not 100%. That's the only point they're making. And I don't, David, excuse me, Alper and Natalie and others, we can look at this specific thing. I don't think we'll resolve that tonight or that that's appropriate under this agenda item, but I think that's the point that you guys are trying to make. And I think that's
You have our, we'll take a look at how Allison's position is funded, and if it's incongruent with the GS monies, we'll definitely make an adjustment. I think the broader concern that I know Natalie and I have talked a lot about the last few weeks has been how do we deploy GS money for its intended uses more quickly for tenant protection, eviction prevention, how do we keep people housed? And one of the things that we have our commitment to, we are looking to accelerate those programs right now. There's a procurement process underway for a program operator on one of the, I don't remember, I apologize. can feel the frustration. It's been 3 years, we haven't gotten the money out the door. That absolutely is, I think, a valid consideration. I think from the staff's perspective, we're trying to get more aligned internally right now. Just know I spent a lot of time with Natalie and the HHS department staff. There's a commitment to move on this. This isn't something that folks aren't prioritizing. Santa Monica is a high-touch city. There's a lot of competing priorities, and our internal systems haven't always been the easiest to work through. So we're trying to create some better clarity and prioritization around what we're going to be working on. Some of the Heather is also spectacular. Part of the Fault Lies with Me, those Heather's been remote for the last. I've actually never met Heather in person. She told me she's much taller in person than you might think, but she's lovely. I'm so excited she's going to help us in a consulting role. But working remote, it's been I haven't done as good a job understanding all of the intricacies of the HHS department. Given that our communications haven't, it's harder to understand what's happening in the relationship. Even in the last couple of weeks with Natalie being in person, there's a lot less missing of conversation. There's a lot more coordination. So you have my word. We hear the frustration from this group. I think it's valid. We all agree internally we need to respond better. We're just hoping to keep telling us what those issues are and then hold us accountable. We work with them.
I'm just gonna make one suggestion. You brought up the challenge with the procurement system, just in, not only towards this measure, but towards all the other measures and just the challenges with competing priorities. I think that the first step to help any measure would be to fix the procurement challenge first, and then it would be easier to help anything else subsequently. If there's a smoother workflow, if there's a smoother way to, with less approvals or whatever the barriers are, you know what those are, but just to make it as seamless as possible for the procurement process in itself, that would enable you to move faster on everything else. I think that should be the first step.
Yeah, there's 100%, and yes, we are working on that. I think currently, things we have to get done, we're trying to work through as a project to prioritize those elements. That's part of the thank you, FFA program. We're a little bit ahead of schedule right now. We'll be able to deploy more quickly. A lot of it's due to just pushing that down and our team are doing right now internally while we fix the system more broadly. All of that's coming.
And so the FFA part of it, which is 30 to 50% of the fund, and the other part, you say that's ahead of schedule too? The
That's
other
something we're
50%?
discussing later. The only thing city, remember, all we are is
I
the
understand.
city
I'm
council
just trying
has
to
given
understand.
one and only one direction so far on how this money should be spent. And that is to fund this, the eviction defense and flexible finance,
That's
whatever.
not-
That's the only thing they've given a direction on. So we'll
It's the
discuss
same
later
in LA
tonight.
too, that it's front-loaded on the eviction prevention and the right to counsel. And it's more long-term to actually decide what we're gonna do with the money in terms of construction and the like.
And we'll
And it
discuss
would be
that.
helpful, I think, at some point, we'll have some ideas that we can communicate to the council.
That's on the agenda,
That's
to
right.
discuss later tonight. But just for example, when the city had 5 million in debt, that's barely enough to do anything in that context. So it's not like when you're talking about creating new affordable housing for a few $1 million. We'll get us there. But that's on the agenda for later tonight. So is there anybody else who wants to say anything? Oliver, if not,
Staff has been great, and we only got to 11 members
may be a little painful at times. But we appreciate that.
No pain, no gain.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, that completes agenda item 3A. We're now on item 6, consent calendar, which are the November 3rd, 2025 minutes. Does anybody have any comments or suggested changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I'll move that we adopt the draft minutes as our minutes. Seconded by Bruce. Do we need a roll call vote, or can we just?
No.
So all in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Let's see. Do we need just a majority of the people who are here, or do we need a majority of the
For minutes, I believe we were.
Gary, are you in favor of our motion to adopt the minutes? David, I'm sorry.
Adopt the minutes, yes, adopt the minutes.
Okay, so there, that's the final. All right. Okay, Heather, last time I'll bother you. We're on item 7, public input on remaining agenda.
No public input.
Okay, so that completes item 7. Now we're on item 9, staff administrative items, and 9A is the Measure GS finance report. Is there any update you want to find?
Yes, well, good evening, Measure GS Committee, and glad that there's some lights tonight. Hopefully you're not going to see it that way. So tonight for the finance report, I'm going to give a verbal one out. There were 3 transactions in October that totaled $2,726,550. Based off the data that the city has, it looks like 2 of them were single families, and the last one, committee member Bruce found that it was the former Bad Robots property. That was a large transaction from there. So those are all the updates I have for financial.
So that was income.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, so it's like we're at 19.7 for the year after 8 months.
So
Okay.
40.
Minus 10.
Oh,
Minus 10.
Minus the 10. So,
So 19.7 total, 10 has been paid to the schools,
correct.
leaving 9.7 for housing and homelessness prevention fund, which is what we had input on.
And there were, so the first year there were 17 transactions that were taxed. The second year there were 27. And this year so far there have been 30. So there are more transactions. But in the first 2 years there were big numbers. So the first year there was 165 million, and the second year 130 million, and this year the biggest is 40 million. So maybe if you take out the biggest, you know, they seem to be hovering about the same level.
What, ask, what are the total dollars going up or down, even though you said the transaction count has gone up? From what you said, that's what I understood.
Yeah, so
I'm just talking about
We're-
total dollars.
we're 8 months,
Uh-huh.
we're a 12-month year. So, we're behind the first 2 years, but those were 12-month years.
No,
The first year was big, the biggest, and the second year was less.
Okay.
And the difference is, I think, explained by, if you have a $180 million
Yeah.
transaction, it's gonna be a bigger year than if you don't.
Okay.
Are we thinking we'll get like a quarterly?
Yes, you are on the same wavelength. So I'm working internally to resolve some of the numbers that have been brought up, the calculations, and then I'm hoping to move to a quarterly financial report that will be written out. And I think a staff member that will be able to help with that reporting, so person. So that is my hope to move forward in the new Measure GS fiscal year in March, moving towards a quarterly report.
I mean,
Yeah, and so, you know,
Maybe they could just put it on a shared drive.
Here. So I'm gonna ask everything, sorry, David, why do I keep thinking you're here? David, now that we actually have 8 people here in the meeting, we're gonna have to raise hands and call on in order to move forward. So, you know this, Jerry? Okay, you're next. Okay, that's enough for the county. David, you're next, and then Wade, did you want to speak after that? Okay, so David, you're next.
Okay, I was, just gonna say, you said that someone's gonna work on a report. Quarterly, if they're not this way. I mean, it's nice to have a report or anytime you come in here, obviously on a piece of paper, but I think if somebody could access it like on the internet or on like SharePoint or something like that, that would be useful, even if somebody comes, people come, just to visit and they would be able to see that kind of like online as like a live, document. I don't know if you guys have that capability with, SharePoint, but, that is something that should be able to be,
So one of the
Yeah.
things that was raised at the last meeting in connection with our work plan was exactly that happening. So one of the things that you're trying to come up with as a committee is a recommendation of what kind of transparency measures to the public. And I think that's probably going to be one of them. And that was at the suggestion of the committee. I added into the work plan that we submitted to city council of what we plan to accomplish over the period of time.
yeah, just wait for respond. We definitely have SharePoint capability. The challenge is we have Brown Act requirements. So we can't share on that type of way with committee members. That would be in violation of the Brown Act. But what my goal is, now especially have staff, would be getting these reports ahead of the committee meeting. That would go out with the agenda. Flyers, other things. Those do are posted as attachments to Measure GS agenda website. Yeah.
Wade, I think Wade was next.
So, 2 million added to the fund tax, what did we call it?
What did we
The
call it?
pot.
To the Housing and Homelessness Prevention Fund.
Fund. Okay, so 2 million added, so there's about 40 million in right now then? Okay, that's probably the closest, about 40 million?
A little under.
Little under 40 million, okay.
Anything?
I think it's both a little, but, the CSTOT committee does exactly what you said, which is the agenda has attachment that tells what the revenue is and spending. So that was the other measure that passed when GS passed, and that's the extra, it's a half cent or full cent? Well, the half cent for when you stay at a hotel, and that goes into a special bucket, and they have their own oversight committee. But when they get the agenda for the meeting, and they only have to meet twice a year, they get the financial report that says how much money came in. So that brings in like $5 million a year. And then they also have a chart that shows where the money went. So that's sort of a model of how we could do it. And we could copy their
Does it work? It looks good?
Yeah, it looks
So
good.
guys, I think actually starting to get into discussion about what kind of transparency measures we want to have is not this agenda item. I think this is getting the report. So we can bring that up later in the meeting. And if we want to form a committee to do that, we can do that too, but I think right now we're just reporting on the actual.
The other point to make that on the timing is that you think that the information goes to the county first when you pay a transfer tax, and then the county lets us know that it happened. So sometimes there's a delay of getting the information from the county, but it's now December 1, we don't have the November numbers, but we do have the October. So it's about a month delay.
you said 8 months.
It's 8 months.
That's a great name.
Because the year we start in March 1, the measure went into effect March 1, so they're on a year that you've never heard of before, but it starts on March 1, so we'll have a New Year's party then.
That's when the tax is first due.
Okay, I have a follow-up to that question.
If I
could ask what the Brown Act is, I'm sorry, I'm not
Oh, no, you're
familiar,
good.
with that, so if I can just get
Yeah, absolutely.
clarification on that.
You
would be
should have
great.
had a training, as committee members, all of you should have had training on Brown Act. If you have not, please let Thomas and myself know. The Brown Act is a state law that, for public meetings and public bodies, such as this committee and city council meeting or members and others, that, trying to think of the best way to
Sure, so
explain
it ensures the discussion topics happen at the meeting. They don't happen in phone calls or text messages or group emails in between meetings. So, and the purpose of that is, so the public has the opportunity to witness and listen to every decision-making, guidance that you guys talk about at the meeting. And part of the Brown Act, the Brown Act training kind of came in as an initial email when you were appointed, and it's one of those PowerPoint presentations that you kind of fly through in 30 minutes at the beginning of an appointment, but I'm happy to share it out with you. It's a fun presentation, and just it just ensures that discussions happen at the meetings.
I understand the base premises, but who implemented, was this something that was voted on? Was this something that was?
State law, so it's a state law that all public agencies have to follow. So that dictates how agendas, minutes are provided, communications between
So
committee
the-
members. So,
This is, basically the Brown Act, says that this, whenever there's a meeting, it can't be like recorded and shared with the public, right? Or
No,
it has
it
to.
has
So
to-
here's the.
Oh, it has to.
Well, let me read this.
Okay.
Point of the Brown Act is to try and make sure that decisions are made by public bodies in public. So that the two main components of that, very high level.
Okay.
One is making sure that you only discuss items that were actually agendized and made available to the public by law at least 72 hours before the meeting. So that the public know, and the meeting has to be accessible to the public so that they can come, so that you know that there's going to be a meeting about a topic, they have the opportunity to come and comment at that meeting. But the other thing is to make sure that the decisions are actually being made at the meeting and not behind closed doors ahead of the meeting when the meeting was just a show. And so the way it does that is it says that you can't, members of the body can't discuss anything that's going to either on the upcoming agenda or even things we think are gonna be on our agenda down the road with more than half of the committee, right? Because otherwise, the 8 of us can get together and just have a discussion before the meeting and agree on what we're gonna do.
Correct.
And then you have this show for the public and we just do what we agree. So that's the guarantee that you won't know what a majority of the people on your.
Basically, so you won't manipulate kind of what the
So that you won't pre-decide what's gonna happen
Okay.
before the public meeting, before the public's had an opportunity to comment or whatever. So that's the basics, and I think what Natalie was saying was that in terms of sharing certain information with the committee, when you share it with everybody, they had to work through some Brown Act issues. But anything that's attached to the agenda, that's being pushed out to the public at the same time as us and all of that.
Oh,
That's not
okay,
a
so then it's not affected by
That,
that.
that I think is what you
yeah,
said.
because you use like
Whether
a
there are other ways
SharePoint
around
or
it.
Dropbox or other device like that to share information or share, it has to be in a public setting. Like,
Is a public setting not considered like if this meeting was online or like on Teams, that's not a
It's
public
just a
setting?
This is a
meeting.
public meeting,
Right,
so
public
like
can come in.
Heather's the public right there. She's a-
No, but I'm saying if the meeting, let's say we weren't all here, let's say the meeting was on Microsoft Teams.
Yeah,
Isn't that still considered a public meeting? Because everybody's signing into the meeting, right?
So there's.
No, I'm just asking, maybe I don't
You want to
understand.
answer the question? The answer to the question is, there's been a change in state law that will allow for remote meetings. It hasn't yet gone into effect. The city hasn't yet said how exactly it's going to implement it, so your question may be solved down the road, but as of today, that's not yet an option. So I think we're, again, getting a little bit far afield from what we're supposed to be discussing here. So
But since everyone is here, we're safe.
No, because it's not an agendized item. So
Oh,
if you have more questions about the Brown Act, Thomas and I are happy to give you additional training or talk to you off separate of this meeting.
Okay, so is this about how much money we have?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Did we figure out how much interest is being accrued?
Now I did, right after the meeting, and now
Didn't Thomas send something out?
Thomas sent out the investment policy.
So if you look at the minutes from the last meeting, that's another
Not very
place.
much, Wade, to answer your question.
There's a link to the.
Yeah, and there's
places
9A.
where you can get that information.
Okay.
But David, did you read
Yes.
that? Okay, so maybe you can answer the question.
Okay, so basically, it's like all cities, all of the money, it's invested basically in treasury bills, which basically, this doesn't even cover the cost of inflation. That is the way that all city funds, I guess, I didn't read the actual investment policy, but my assumption is that's the way that all city funds are invested when they're idle. So,
So
you're
that's
not
what
getting.
market is paying for T-bills. That's the answer.
And there's,
Okay.
yeah, the
Correct.
investment policy, which is set by city council, is in the minutes, and you can review that, because the Measure GS ballot measure language didn't speak to it, we follow, the city investment policy towards that.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that completes item 9A, so let's move on to 9B, which is report from staff. And then a preliminary discussion of possible action and initial staff proposal ideas, consideration of program gaps for the Measure GS use funds. So Natalie, are you presenting? on
Yes,
that?
I am presenting.
Take
I'm
it away.
also mindful it's a very packed agenda, so, happy to do an initial presentation. We can follow this towards other meetings as well. So apologies, this didn't go out ahead of time, with the holiday, did, affect this timeline. So, at last, at last committee meeting, you all approved the staff or the proposal process for when there are staff ideas, and the question came up of if staff had any initial ideas for the use of the funds. So what is ahead of you right now is the Measure the funds potentially used, and then very initial potential ideas that staff has discussed. Again, nothing concrete. There's no proposal right now following the proposal process, but just wanted to honor the request at the last meeting. Happy to also walk through it. So the first one is that staff is currently working on right now, based off of the Mayor 16 item earlier this fall, is right now it's being called a habitability microgrant program. The request was for a microgrant or matching program to address habitability issues in rent-controlled and deed-restricted residences across the city. So that right now, staff is developing that and potentially might be looking at Measure GS funds for that. If that does move forward, we would be bringing forward a staff proposal through the process for that. The second one, I've talked briefly about it, but is a voucher tenancy preservation program. This would be a program very open, public knowledge, there's been articles about them, are changes in the COC program that there was a New York Times article recently about this that will be changing COC requirements. COC is a continuum of care program. It's a federal program for chronically homeless households. Currently, the city uses all of its COC allocations for vouchers, either permanent supportive housing or as a regular voucher that's a tenant-based voucher. And federal policy is changing to where we'll be limiting the program to 30% of the funds towards permanent housing, which includes voucher programs as well. So that just happened there's been rumblings about it during the shutdown, but then in the last few weeks that has become reality. And so that's something staff is reviewing to see the impact and how to address that. So that might be coming down the pipeline. The other one, there's been no formal changes, but mixed status voucher programs. Those are households where there's some undocumented folks in the household. And currently under federal policy, if they have a voucher, they receive a prorated value based off of how many residents or U.S. residents or have legal status are in the household. So for example, if there's 2 people in the household and 1 person has legal status, they would receive half the value of that voucher. And there may be changes in the future to that. And so Santa Monica has not many of these households, but there is about less than 10 households that would be impacted. There might be other potential changes to voucher requirements and funding restrictions that have yet been announced. That could include work requirements, time-limited requirements that hasn't been announced, but there again could be potential. Or there also could be eliminations or reduction of funding just of voucher programs. So this has happened already with the Emergency Housing Voucher Program, or EHV, that was in the news earlier this year. It was a program where funding was supposed to last until 2030, but with rent increases, those funds are expected to run dry next year. So staff has already planned for the emergency housing voucher programs, but there may be others that might be impacted. If you flip over to the next page, the other, I think, last meeting was also discussed being in alignment with other city plans. So wanted to highlight some of the programs that were identified in that city's housing or homelessness strategic plan. That could be ideas from Measure GS funds. That includes the development of affordable housing on publicly owned properties, the exploration and creation of a universal basic income program, similar to the Preserving Our Diversity or POD program for vulnerable populations to thrive. Augmenting the limited project-based vouchers, which support permanent supportive housing, development and operations. So potentially that could be like a rental guarantee reserve program, and also exploring ways and mechanisms to develop middle income housing. So current Santa Monica residents can remain within the city. There's a number of innovative financing programs out there that could potentially be used for these funds as well. And then our HPI team wanted to highlight what's called a predictive prevention pilot program, which is with the LA County Homelessness Prevention Units. And this is a new pilot program that collects county data and artificial intelligence to identify households that are at risk of homelessness, to target them with 6 months of income assistance and case management of stabilizing households before they fall into homelessness. So this is a program that the HPI team is currently looking at and potentially exploring having a targeted program here in Santa Monica as well. And then the last two is operating subsidies for those financially challenged affordable properties in light of rising operating costs. These are long-term affordable developments here within the city, have been affordable for many years and continue to be, but may be facing financial challenges due to the rising operating costs and the increasing. And then lastly, as discussed at the last committee meeting, is including in the city's housing trust fund guidelines for affordable housing development and preservation, including that. If you wanted to include that as part of the guidelines, to incorporate that into the over-the-counter process. So, again, these are initial ideas that just present. We are on the request of the committee last week. Or not last week, last month.
Good. Anybody have any questions or comments?
What's your sense of timing for more formally coming back to us? Hard to say.
So some of these are very initial. I think the habitability microgrant and the voucher tendency preservation program are more likely, those will probably come forward in the next few months. Once we have a better sense, especially with federal policy and what's happening there. And there's history, when there was redevelopment years ago, there was a redevelopment fund-based subsidy program that the city still now funds. We're funding maybe 10 households still that are left from that program. And then
So
the other ones
is your
are,
point there that there's maybe some existing infrastructure that can be?
oh, there's definitely, yeah, we have yes, we're very much able to utilize that voucher setup. We have different mechanisms for doing that. And then the other ones, to answer your question, sorry, Vice Chair, are more concept ideas that haven't been fully.
The voucher program, do you have numbers on that, and are they helping people stay within Santa Monica?
So, as I mentioned, the mixed status households, we haven't ran the numbers recently, but 10 households that would be affected.
But the other voucher, there was another.
Yeah, the continuum of care, those that are homeless or previously. We don't know the full impact for those policies. It's something that staff is currently looking at. At one point, it would be, we have about 160 households that are on that program, but we'd have to look at the subsidy, how much it is, and if there's other creative ways that we could utilize and address. There's COC funding that we have to maintain those households.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I just, a general comment about maximizing the resources that the GS program has and trying not to just backfill when state or federal governments withdraw and move to more of an understanding that if we did something like that, it would be temporary, and we would also be advocating with our representatives to make sure that funding gets restored. I guess I don't want to use the money to continue something that another level of government has abandoned without some serious consideration.
And I'll add, the COCs, we're definitely advocating, we've been communicating with the lobbyists, the mayor has sent a letter, our local representatives are also advocating on that as well.
Yeah, well, I have one of my other AARP district representative
Oh.
here, so
talking about like just a regular housing choice voucher program.
Yes.
So right now, there's no impact. There's been, there was a New York Times opinion article that was done back in March or April of this year that was written by the HUD secretary, the Health and Human Services secretary, and one or two other secretaries, I can't recall which ones, that talked about wanting to implement work requirements as well as timing requirements. And so that was back in March or April. So that's been out there, but there hasn't been any formal changes from HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development, on the Section 8 program.
So instituting changes to work after, even if someone has disagreed or.
So again, there's been no guidance. What it might be is that if if the voucher holder is a senior, has a disability, or there may be like exceptions. It might also include the volunteer requirement. So if you're not able to work, maybe volunteer as well. With that, there's been no formal guidance. This is all just thinking in advance of if something did happen, could Measure GS funds be a protection to maintain those tenancies for those that are currently on the program? Not for new people coming on in, but for those that are currently on the program.
Is it possible impact that you can end up with package for long-term?
Correct. Or residents might choose not, or be able to afford to live in St. Monica anymore, and they would go somewhere else, and that would be impacting our local. Again, there's been no formal guidance, this is just more looking forward.
I'll call on myself. So, first of all, thank you for this. I think it is helpful to see what people are thinking about, and may help inform some discussion we have later tonight. Katie might like, but I guess what I would say to Mark's comment is that I share your frustration that people who should be funding this are abandoning that. I think I can say this in a non-political way, particularly when it's coming from the state of California, which brings a lot more money into the federal government than we get back. But that being said, whether it's a person who had a voucher and suddenly doesn't have it, or it's a person with some other life event or whatever, same thing, which is I think what you guys are touching on there. It's preserving the tendencies of people in Santa Monica. And to me, the only question would be, is the level of federal subsidy so high relative to our resources that it's sort of triage concept? We'd have to do it. One of the hopes for Measure GS, the economy to recover, we need some of those once every so often big buildings to sell and come in. Hopefully that we don't have to do that. We can take care of everybody.
Yeah, clarify my comments, Mr. Chair. The intent was to just make sure we make it clear that the money is being used to gap fill, to keep people in their homes on a temporary basis as we look for options, because it was a federal program, it should probably continue to be a federal program. But no, I totally agree. The goal is keeping people in their homes.
I agree with what you just said.
And whatever our funds can do to keep that, to make that happen.
Wait.
I have to say it. Yeah, California shouldn't be waiting for the federal government anyway. we're the fourth largest economy in the world, we should make sure that our leaders in California, because we haven't gotten into this housing crisis just during this administration, so we need to tell them to do their job more anyway.
Okay. Anything else on this topic? Go ahead, David.
There's gonna be a small correction when Wade said that they're the fourth largest, now it's the fifth largest. Too many people left.
When did that happen?
Okay, okay.
When did that happen?
Okay, let's
Over the last
have the
5
debate
No,
about.
no,
Okay.
it's still ranked fourth largest economy in the
Okay,
world.
I'm calling this item to a close. Now let's go on to item 9C, which is discussion of possible action on revised proposed process for staff recommended funding proposals.
No, I don't know. I think this was, when I remember from the agenda setting, the committee's talking about.
The thing you passed out last.
Yeah, the thing,
I
yeah.
think the issue is we didn't vote last time.
No, because you.
But we did make some suggestions, so.
It was like the language wasn't right for us to be able to vote on it, to reform the language in this measure so we could vote on it.
Right.
But that's what it was, right?
That's correct.
Was the
The
language
minutes say
covered in the
that
Brown Act?
the process agenda is at the final approval by the committee.
Yeah, because you passed it out last month.
So I think we're just, you guys are just talking and giving the final approval. I didn't have anything prepared.
So that's fine.
Okay.
Does any, well, is it gonna make any difference whether we do this now or later? Because I do think it would help people to actually have the
Another
document again, because some of us were at the last meeting, some weren't.
It won't make a difference.
So what I would recommend, unless anybody objects here, is that we continue this item to our January.
And we'll attach the.
So in
And
January.
then that will attach the documents.
Okay.
We could even,
So we'll just say it's a continued item and we'll put the document on.
good. Okay, so that then is how we're disposing of 9C. Now we're on 9D, which is discussion of possible action on canceling the Monday, January 5th, 2026 regular meeting, and scheduling a special meeting on Monday, January 12th, 2026. This comes from the fact that Monday, right after the New Year's holiday, might not be the ideal time for all of us to get together and have paid attention to the agenda and the like. So the thought was, not to mention it'd be harder for cities to get out the agenda and whatever, since I'll be here for everybody's Christmas. So whether we could just move it a week later, we have to call it a special meeting, but we'll do that. Does that work for everybody? Good.
I would wanna know if there are problems with people doing, I mean, I understand, but, if there aren't any problems with anybody being able to make that meeting, then I say we should keep doing.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't
the
think it's
12th works for me.
necessarily.
Yeah, I'm fine with the 12th.
I don't think it necessarily means people can't attend, but people would be better prepared, it would be easier on staff to get the agenda out a week ahead of time, which is why I would personally support that if people can make it to work. But others can express their views, who else wants to? It's great, state their views.
I'm sorry?
I just said either works for me, so.
Okay.
Into the 12th.
You?
Yeah, I think on the 12th I'm fine.
Yeah, better for me.
12, Bruce?
Yep.
Okay, so,
To do motion.
we need a motion to do this, I think we did. Okay, so I'll move that we cancel our regular meeting on January 5th and reschedule it to the same Monday, January 12th as a special. Second for that. Support. Second for Mark. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Wade's abstained. Okay. That's the vote on that. Now we're on to 9E. Discussion and possible action on confirming a tour of CCSN property for the interested. Wow, NGSROC members.
That's the internal irony.
I was wrong, that's the only thing that was part tonight, now that I have the name right.
You can find a way to announce.
But anyway, that's just some people who weren't here last time, some folks who have been less involved over this over the years and are interested in seeing the CCSM property, talking to people about that. So for anybody who's interested, that's what we were talking about, so. So I see,
Yes, David.
oh, David and then Amy and then we.
I just had a question, you said move the meeting to the 12th, but it'll still be the same, like here.
Yes.
Same time,
Oh.
same place.
Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to clarify, because I was the one that suggested that a tour might be helpful for committee members, because I heard Mark say, when we were talking about strategies for using the production dollars, that we should learn about and do some research about how other cities and communities use their funds. And it made me feel like it would be good for all the committee members to understand, what the city has already been producing. I just shared that as an affordable housing developer, the Santa Monica process is really kind of held up as a model process for a couple of reasons. One is that the per unit subsidy from the city is larger than it is in many other communities, which, right, that may feel like, oh, we're giving a lot of money, but what that allows the affordable housing developers to do is to move much more quickly to get the units built, because then they don't have to go and apply for additional funding from the county or additional funding from the state. So that's like a piece of the Santa Monica process that I think a lot of affordable housing developers are kind of jealous of the developers who are working in Santa Monica. And I think the other really important thing is that the Santa Monica approval process is basically administrative, which means, right, you're not going to city council and politicizing the project, politicizing the funding, creating an opportunity for opposition. So that's another piece that the city of Los Angeles actually worked very hard not to make approvals administrative, but to kind of try and move their process in that direction, right? Again, kind of looking to Santa Monica as a model. So I guess I just want to say that, like, Santa Monica is already doing a lot of things really well in terms of trying to produce affordable. So it would be good to go and see what they produce if we haven't.
Wait.
That's great, but what, did you look up, Thomas, you were talking about looking up the numbers of affordable housing units built since the housing elements plan was put in place?
I don't think I was looking at those numbers.
Well, we talked about it. Anyway, that's great, Amy.
So let's
Vice
be
Chair-
clear right
Vice
now,
Chairwoman.
the
Vice
agenda
Chairwoman.
item is about whether or not to schedule such a trip. That's the
Yeah,
only thing
that's
on this
great,
agenda.
that's great.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
So, after last committee meeting, I reached out to Community Corporation of Santa Monica, CCSM. And they are very excited to host, the committee for a tour. But understanding the Brown Act, again, we have to make sure we're in compliance with that. And so we wanted to get a sense of how many people would be interested in attending a tour. And then we can do potentially 2 tours, or if it's less than the amount, we can do 1 tour. They've given three dates that would work well with the committee members. Or, excuse me, work well with them for a tour. So I guess who would be interested?
So we can take 5,
Would be 5 for each tour.
no more than 5.
But we
Per
we can
tour.
have more than
Per
5,
tour.
but for each tour would be
Yeah.
5.
Exactly.
We're voting, right?
I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'm
We're not voting, I think we're just who wants to
Who would
go.
be interested?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Robert.
Alright, so 1, 2, 3. Okay. So, oh, we have
It's true.
And I would go two if we're not.
yeah, I think we would be good with 5. So there's one this Thursday that you had availability, at 9 a.m. If that's too soon, I have some later that I can connect with you after the meeting.
That sounds good. Later and later.
I can't do 9 a.m. on Thursday.
Okay, how about I email 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you? You have it in there, oh, before I'm writing everyone's names down. And then we can coordinate that way rather than taking up meeting time. Okay, that's all.
Is afternoon good for any, or early evening and even, is that a possibility?
So they had, you said 9 a.m. before.
Just on Thursday, I'm picking someone up from
Oh,
the station.
next Monday, they have a 9 or 10 a.m. Or next Thursday,
What?
1 p.m. next Thursday. Not
That's-
this Thursday, but a week from this Thursday.
1 p.m. a week from Thursday? Does that work? All right, so you'll be contacting people. I like that one.
Okay, so
We'll
we'll figure it out.
I can actually do Thursday at 9 a.m., but I can't do any of the other dates.
All right, maybe we'll do 2 tours. I'll reach out separately to help organize.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't think we need to vote on anything there. So that completes item 9. Now we're on item 13A, measure GS resident oversight committee member discussion items. A, updates from established subcommittees, possible actions, legal assistance and flexible financing subcommittee. Is there anything you guys want to report?
Just that I think we have kind of a longer term trying to get, this goes to the transparency issue too, get the information that's in the Fetterman Dunn report to see if we can do that regularly. So that we got, last time we got the information from the city attorney's office of how many unlawful detainers they received. But there's another thing that was in Fetterman Dunn that somehow goes to some website or some database and will tell you the actual number of unlawful detainers filed by zip code. So if there are people who file an unlawful detainer, but they don't comply with the rule that you have to tell the city attorney, it catches those people too. So I think it would be good to get, to work on getting that data. And then I guess the unlawful detainer actions that are actually filed are public. The 3-day notices are not public, they're not, it doesn't have the name on it.
Yeah, my understanding from my work in this area, lawyer, is for the first, I believe, 60 days, the file is sealed. And then it lasts longer than that. I think it might become public for a while, but most cases resolve with a settlement where the parties agree to keep it. And the purpose of all that is because if it gets into a public database for landlords that were subject to an eviction action, it makes it much harder for you to find new housing. So I'm not quite sure where they're getting their, I think you probably get the number.
No,
filed,
so maybe it's
but maybe
just
that's
that it was filed and what the basis was and what the number was, if there was ground code. Anyway, the concept would be, I don't think we need to hire Fetterman Dunn to update what they have in their report. The question would be, can we figure out a way that the city can get those numbers directly? You got the numbers of what the number of unlawful interactions received by the city attorney's office. So that we kind of have a finger on our pulse of how big the problem is, like how many people
call on myself. Is that the number that's in the Fetterman Dunn report? How many were reported to the
The Fetterman
city?
Dunn has two numbers. One, the number of unlawful detained, they have three numbers. They have the 3-day notices that were reported to the city attorney's office, the unlawful detainer actions that are reported to the city attorney's office. And then they had a third category versus some county agency could do unlawful detainer actions by zip code by month. And that number was higher than the number reported to the city attorney's office, kind of proving that there's an underreported problem. But that's the most accurate number.
So it seems like what we have to find out is how to get that data from the county, just file all the records I think with the county on an ongoing basis to give us that figure.
I'll try that.
Well,
But it might be that the city could just,
we have contacts with Fetterman Dunn, so we can ask them how they got it.
because I think the Fetterman Dunn might have gotten it from the city.
I'll have to see.
But it's the,
So,
it was the, and it said in the Fetterman Dunn report, they identified the 2 zip codes where most of the evictions were.
so we're trying to make statistics of when somebody is being given an eviction notice right away.
Just so that we can say, the committee, that we understand what, even if it's monthly or quarterly, how many people are being evicted in Santa Monica. And that's the problem we're hoping to address by what they've called flexible financial assistance, which we should rename eviction prevention.
And if those people get in touch with, if they get some sort of help before 5 days, you can help them from going through the process?
Yeah, that's a different issue.
Oh.
But as
What's your
Chairman
3 days?
points out, the issue of confidentiality with respect to tenants. So you don't want, when I talk to the people that legal aid, you don't want people to have this black mark in their record, and it's hard for them to get housing.
Can I clarify this point of why we're looking up that information? Because I think that's maybe where Wade's confused too. We're getting the information almost like a medical assessment, where are our interventions working? So over time, hopefully that number will go down correctly, right? So as long as we know the number, as we're putting money into houses that are in need, hopefully that number will go down because they're getting the support before those consequences kick in. So it's not a proactive thing to help the people on that list. Those people are already in the unfortunate situation. It's preventing that number from growing.
And
Right?
if it is going up, then, we can say, okay, these programs, either we need to rethink what we're doing or do something, because we would like that number to go down.
Does the city have some program in place, or Measure GS doesn't have the program in place yet, right? Do people know when they're going through this process, do they have any place they can say, Santa Monica, we need your help staying in our house right now?
Well, the current pilot program with Right to Counsel, they do that, and they work with people in Natalie's office, and they do have some programs underway that help people.
But,
I'm just talking about
But the
getting,
message
if we
is-
could get clean data to know how frequent the problem is. As Milan points out, if you could say this, and it was in Fetterman Dunn, they said this is how many was in this year, and this is how many this year. Then we could say, okay, is the number up or down in 2025, and are these programs working to help prevent this?
I'm just thinking about before they get into this process, if there's, like with the housing administration or someplace, that they would know that Measure GS has a program to keep you from having to go.
Yeah, so that will be part of the program, marketing and outreach, so that will be part of it.
So I'm gonna call myself. So I think what Chris just said, is we need a baseline.
Yeah,
And,
Of course.
and we'll have that baseline now. It could go up for other reasons besides whether our program's effective or not. So we have to be careful about correlation with others. But once we have that, hopefully our prevention program, which will get put in place, which is trying to get people before they can get into that mode, will be effective. I've been intrigued by this, what LA County apparently is doing. They've got waiting till they come to you, which would be something that would potentially help us drive that number down. But it's not just that, part of the program is also making sure that people who do get this actually are getting lawyers. Because that's the absolute, I mean, there's all sorts of studies that show that the only thing that's really effective once you're in an eviction action is you gotta have a lawyer. You also need money to do stuff. So we'll also be tracking how many people are being served relative to how many are actually occurring. For us. Right now, we've heard from the city manager, we've heard prior meetings from Natalie, et cetera, and Bruce, that the city's heard loud and clear that to try and set up this program as quickly as possible. They're working on that, but it isn't here today. But in anticipation of it being in place, we need to see some data. So, did I accurately state?
Yeah, and it also is in the federal number report, this justified why the money should be spent on right to counsel, because it identified, we know there are these people. And so the most accurate number, if we get it, would be the number from the court. I guess when they file it, they have the zip code, so they know what zip code it is. That's it.
That's what I was thinking, Bruce, right, that it's a great way to demonstrate need, right? Like,
Right.
the committee has decided that we spend the money in what's, there's a need.
Okay, so now we'll move on to 13A sub 2, which is affordable housing production subcommittee. So the first thing is I just pulled up the agency of the Housing and Community Development Department of the state of California has a dashboard, a report, everybody has to annually report the way they count, whether something's happened, just one building permit is full. Okay, which is different from saying the way Measure GS counts, not Measure GS, way the city counts for its Proposition R, which is when the certificate of occupancy, once it's actually pretty built, they count that way. But for purposes of the RENA allocation, the housing elements and all of that, they do that. So here is the information, about a third of the way through the cycle. So I don't think they get, because they only report annually, so obviously there's a check. But so for the city of Santa Monica, we have the building permits pulled during this housing element, 146 units, which is 5.2% of the 2,794 that they said in the meeting permits for us. For low income, there have been 34 building permits pulled, which is 2% of the 1,672 low income units that the state SCAG has decided that Santa Monica should reduce.
2%?
2%. Moderate income, we have pulled 94 permits, that's 5.5% of the 1,702 moderate income units that the RENA allocation gave to the city of Santa Monica. And then above moderate rate units, it's been 899 pet building permits pulled, which represents 33% of that. So we're pretty close to on pace for above moderate income, and we're obviously way low based on the targets, but everybody pretty much agreed that was going to be the case because we can't create that except with somewhat through inclusionary and you need money. And so there's only so much money to go around. When they first gave us these allocations, I did the math that it would have taken based on our historical costs of creating deed-restricted affordable housing. It would have taken 50% of the city's pre-COVID general fund, plus 12.5% of the entire state's tax credits to create these 6,300, whatever it is. So it's never been a number that anybody had any realistic hope of actually achieving, but, you know, what they say is if you don't, it's that thing, if you don't shoot for the stars, right, you don't know how far. So it's certainly pushing the city to do that, and there is, you know, a lot of effort going on to try
And
to push forward. So go ahead on that part. You have a question?
Oh, 2%'s pretty good.
We we all know it's but just if you're curious, if you want to see, for example, what Los Angeles County as a whole is, what they're doing, you know.
I know, I'm
So they're 2.7% for their very low, 7.7% for their low, and 1.7% for their bottom. Or Los Angeles, you know, so everybody, this is the reality of every RETA cycle. The market rate housing gets built more than the RETA targets and affordable.
how can we change that?
Well, we're trying to change that by having raised money to replace the money that the state took away when they got rid of redevelopment money. We need more money and hopefully have programs that spend it in a way that is most cost efficient to do that. And that's in part going to be something that, you know, the city is clearly thinking about, which is, they aren't calling it this, but that is what it is, social housing. They're thinking about building housing themselves on public land, and doing it in a way that involves not just people who qualify for tax credits, but others, which allows for some cross-subsidization, and potentially could do it if you cut out the profit center, put a developer fee in the affordable housing area, and can reduce the cost. That's, you know, they apparently did something like this in Vermont. So that's one possibility, but the main part of it is the cross-subsidization. To me, the only other thing is raising public capital, because everything else is my personal opinion. This is nobody's opinion other than mine. Is we're, you know, chopping at the edges, if you want to drive union laborers, so their union thing, not pay prevailing wage. You know, you can lower some costs, people talking about manufacturing costs, whatever, but it's not going to fundamentally change the economics. It will allow limited times we have to go further, but it's not going to fundamentally change the facts that it's like 2.7%, 5%. Right? If you could cut it in half, that's either have to cross-subsidize or you're probably or get, as you said, get the state of California or the federal government to actually start pulling. And then that then comes to the other question about, you know, why part of the money here is for rent subsidy, not just in the context of emergency rent subsidy, but, you know, I guess they're calling it universal basic income here, but that's what the existing preserved regular state program is. It says this is how much money you have after rent. So we're going to pay you the difference between what you got after you pay your rent and that, so that you don't have to spend one thing. Back when I ran the numbers, and I will run the revised numbers for folks, but back in when we first did the pod program and all of that, so basically we can give exact
Yes.
numbers here.
What agenda item are we?
This is the
Reduction
affordable housing
subsidy?
production subdivision.
Okay. Then you talk about.
You're right, we should probably talk about that when we go to House, but I think that's fair. Anyway, so, but in terms of producing stuff, I mean, I think there are things and everybody's trying to do it. At the margins, I mean, the thing with prevailing wages puts us in conflict between different, and quite frankly, that's part of what the city has in mind. If they're gonna do it themselves, I think. And that, well, no, actually, well, it depends how they do it, whether they can do that or not. But it puts you in a, puts some of us like myself who thinks that part of the whole housing problem is people aren't earning enough. And so if you aren't paying prevailing wages, I mean, those workers are making less money. So it's a tension of what you do about all of that. But the two big things I think that could potentially change things and need more explanation is social housing, because you're cross-subsidizing between people who are moderate. So they're paying, instead of going to profit to somebody, it's cross-subsidizing the other units, or trying to get private capital identified some people about that. Heather was kind enough to give me a contact of somebody that she knows who's involved with that. And we worked on like, that's one of the things that we'll be trying to follow up on. So that's all. I'm sure Brad.
Just, I didn't catch what the first number you shared was, 146, what was that?
That was the number of building permits that were, I don't know, I typically go back to San Monica. I can switch it back to all of it, see what it is. So 146 is the number of units that a building permit was pulled.
Okay.
To start construction on in this house. This cycle, which was from
And just
2021, like October 2021 until 2029, I believe.
Just a comment that, and appreciate the community's work. With the resources we have, our best strategy is to identify things that are more likely to be successful than other strategies. Does that make sense? I mean, we're not going to, with the resources that the GS has, build adequate affordable housing in Santa Monica. We will be able to identify strategies and projects that are likely to generate perhaps private investment because they've shown to be successful.
Well, I guess so first of all, I guess the problem is bigger. I mean, think about it. In LA County, there are 500,000 lower income households that pay more than 50% of their income. Just forget the people who pay between 30 and 50%, but just those people. So creating 500, and our share of it in Santa Monica, I forget what the figure is, something like 6,000 or something like that. So, we could use every one of those. So we're not gonna solve the problem completely, but we have to do two things in my mind. So just my mind. One, for people who are already housed, it's gonna maybe more cost effective to subsidize their existing rent to keep them there, particularly if they're in rent controlled units where it can't go up at ridiculous amounts and all of that. But number two, we have to build more, as much affordable housing as we can, because even though this isn't our committee to deal with the folks who are living on the street, but the people who are living on the street who want to get into housing, to get them into housing, get that housing for them to live in, that they can afford some version of this. We need it because one of the other ways that people cope with the high rent is by paying rent. So more people living in a unit than is reasonable, so we have to get a place for those folks to matter. For us in Santa Monica, at least from my perspective, our city, including all of us who live here, benefit tremendously from people who are generating the sales tax, the TOT tax, and all of that, and that includes a lot of low-wage earners in the retail industry, and the entertainment industry, our hotel workers, whatever, and it's inequitable and, in my mind, inconsistent with what this city believes in, and the voters believe in, that people should be driving 2 hours to come here to work for that, and then have to drive back while we all enjoy the benefits of all that tax, whatever. So if we're ever going to have more of those folks able to live here, so we're going to have to create more affordable housing. So we need to do both. And the question is, what in the long term is how much money are we going to be able to raise? And what Bruce reported is very consistent with what the study that was done before city council, before GS went to the ballot, which was that it's very, as I told you, I think it went from 1 year where if the same things had happened, you had the tax, we would have gotten $16 million. Another year it was like $120 million. Well, and it's a huge compare it much more so than in LA, because we're so much smaller, so one or two, huge transactions makes all the difference. I'm hopeful that we'll have money for this, because one of the things that I mentioned last time, and that will be coming until before city council, their second December meeting, is they're going to revise the off-site program, and will include a commitment by folks, either they'll pay the GS tax, assuming it's all, that it's still there, no political difference, but even if they don't, they're committed, if they're gonna take advantage of this program, the requirements is that they have to do that, so that should generate, more money than the kind of thing we're seeing right now.
Thanks.
I wanted to follow up, Mark, on what you said about looking for kind of proven strategies, because I think the one thing that's important to keep in mind is, like, I think because of the crisis here in Los Angeles and like really across the country, people are exploring all these new strategies that aren't necessarily proven. And so, like, maybe we have to go out on a limb, right, as a way to support that exploration. So I just feel like that might be another, I don't know, consideration when we get to that place.
But that, thank you for saying that, because it reminded me of one other thing, because you said specifically about private capital. And at least some discussions I had a few years ago, I mean, the economics of work, a lot of this stuff is not focused on places like Santa Monica, really highlight costs, really all this other stuff, it's much more, middle income, lower middle income, moderate, that kind of housing and whatever out there. And so while hoping to attract private capital, I think one of the ways that we might have to explore is by giving them some incentive to come here.
Right.
If they don't have it, that might be something that we could leverage some money from GSA, but we'll do this for you. If that's there, that could change their calculation to make it, advantageous here, but that's.
We have a reasonable universe to have an impact now. I mean, I think that's, while the challenges are great, the size of our city gives us some advantages to attracting that sort of thing, to say, you'll make a dramatic impact in Santa Monica versus Los Angeles.
We're gonna change.
David, I have been doing so well there.
All names. I was just going to ask if you said the number of units that were filed for permitting in Santa Monica, which was 146 or something like that?
Well, for very low income,
Okay,
that means people making 50% of the area median income.
okay.
That was 146 for those units.
Okay.
But the
So
total affordable housing units is, let's see, it's 274. 274.
Okay, my question is, what is the current price, whatever the number of units is, let's say it's 300 units. The number doesn't, I mean, it matters in the grand scheme of things, but what is the current price to build in the city of Santa Monica an affordable housing unit? I read some articles that state that they build homeless housing and it costs $1 million in the city of Santa Monica per unit to build that unit. And I am just asking the question, in order to get private investment, their ROI work for them, going to be very challenging at that price figure. If it is correct, please correct me if I'm getting, but I read this in an article from a developer that this built across Los Angeles and affordable housing in, or homeless housing in Santa Monica, and that was the price.
So,
I guess I would just also say the other challenge with like a return on investment for private capital is, right, when you have rents that are affordable for low income, very low income, extremely low income people, you're just not generating enough cash for them to make a return, right? And this is why it's so difficult to build affordable housing, because you can't provide, when the rents are actually affordable to the incomes of people who live in Los Angeles, it's very difficult to provide a return.
Correct. And that is why we have all of these
Like cost to build a
subsidies.
side, sorry.
No, but that's why we have all of these subsidies to try to help to, because, I mean, they're building, I mean, we understand they wanna do a good deed and, provide, let's say, 1,000 homeless, units, but if they're not gonna make a profit, they're not a nonprofit organization or developer, they're not going to, be incentivized to build it in Santa Monica or to build it in Compton. They're not gonna be incentivized either, or they're gonna take it where they're gonna get more subsidized dollars, whether to make them whole from the renter, or, you know, what other tax kind of incentive they can get.
right, so one thing you have to understand, and I actually pulled for other reasons, what the cost is in January, I'll give you the exact figures, but it's not, it used to be, it was significantly more expensive in, Santa Monica because the price of the land was more valuable, and that was a secret, but as the cost of construction have jumped so dramatically, the percentage of the cost that's in the land is a lot less. Amy can speak to this, but it's very expensive to build a unit in anywhere, an affordable housing unit in California, certainly anywhere in LA County and the like. So, you know, this is a discussion for another day, and that's what we have to explore is, at this point, is there enough of a difference? I mean, one of that we, or could we make with a reasonable investment of that, make up the difference in whatever it is to incentivize people to come here. So, anyway, but that's not for today, that's just.
No, I
issues
just
to
had
be
a,
explored, but you're right, it's extremely, it's
question
extremely
in terms
expensive.
of what the cost is if you
It's
do
very
what number
expensive.
is.
And one thing also just, Renee will remember this because we came to this view when we were on the housing commission in the past, but, you know, a unit is this dumb metric because that treats, you know, a unit for one person, same as a 3-bedroom unit. And so, you know, the closest approximation, or the easiest approximation for number of people is bedrooms. So per bedroom cost is probably a more useful because it's more expensive to build a family size unit, but actually on a per person served basis, it's cheaper.
Well, okay, but, I mean, you brought up the great point about the land cost is high, but how about the cost when you're, building with, public money? You also have to have prevailing wages on all of, that, it's not like a private build, which is a little bit different, you don't have to have prevailing wage. Not that we don't want
No, I
people
mentioned
to have prevailing
which is
wage.
one of the issues that poses an interesting question because, you know, which is better to pay prevailing wage and get fewer units or to not pay it so that those people don't earn the same money and they may have trouble affording housing themselves. So it's a difficult thing. But anyway, I think that completes this report for tonight.
Quick
Oh,
clarifying
sure.
question about that, just with regards to production, like if any of the new stuff that seems to be going in along with Wilshire, is that 30% of that has to be affordable? There's no provisions like that for any of the new builds?
No, so actually so one way is we do it, so in the city charter, the voters put in 1990 a provision that said 30% of all new multifamily housing in the city should be affordable to occupied by moderate or lower income people, and at least half of that should be for lower income people. So, but there was never the idea that all of that would be created simply by inclusionary. That is, that the private developers in building their buildings would have to set aside. So it was a combination of inclusionary and the projects that are funded by the city, tax credits, and those things together. In fact, which I did pull out for everybody, we actually, in that period from fiscal year, I believe it's 93, 94, year 2023, 2024, 35% of all new housing in the city of Santa Monica has been restricted affordable housing. So we've actually managed through the combination of those two things to achieve what's in the city charter. Things are sort of falling, and I was going to do the math, but I can't. So we're 200, even in this cycle, we're 274 out of 1173 is affordable housing. So it's 24%. That's pretty good. It's higher than most places, even if on a per unit. So we're still, sticking to it, and hopefully when we bring online, a couple of public land projects that are in the works, those will be 100% affordable. So that will bring up those numbers and hopefully we'll continue to make it. The state has said that basically that you can't have an inclusionary requirement of more than 15% unless you manage to convince HCD that you can show a report that won't discourage the creation of the market rate housing. So that's what we have. The state has density bonus laws, which mean that, which almost every developer uses, which means that if you do just a 50% bonus, you get that basically from the 15%. So if you have a project of 100 units, okay, so our law says you have 50% of those has to be restricted affordable housing. The state said, and 50% of your base project, said 50% is there, you get a 50% density bonus. So effectively, that means you're going to have 150 units, you're still only going to have the same 15 affordable units, so you comes down to about 10%. Then they passed another law that said, well, if you include another 15% of moderate in that base 100 projects, you have 30 total affordable housing units out of 100. Well, they have 100% density bonus, so that would be 200 units, 30, so you max getting 15%. What the city council's approved and it's not modified is you can do that, or you can get those same bonuses under local Santa Monica law. You can do it off-site or various other things to make it more attractive. It's only for projects that already have approvals, so none of which have been moving forward because of the environment we're in. And on top of that, though, you have to agree that obviously if the law is there, you're going to have to pay the GS tax if you're going to turn around 5 years from now and sell the building, which is the model that many of the developers do. But also, and if somehow it goes away, you're going to pay that same 5% to the city. So that's sort of how the inclusionary piece of all of this works. Okay, anything else on this? Okay. So now we're on item, forgive me, 13.3, which is our mission statement.
Quick comments.
Subcommittee. Huh?
Oh,
Quick
please.
comments.
Yeah, sure.
Can we take a 1-minute break? I just like
I
to
just
go
thought-
because my throat's getting hurt.
That's awesome.
That's it.
You stand on that? Show you where to go.
I understand, we weren't
We don't
advised
have
to
to
do
do
it,
that.
we don't have process.
Okay, so that's not our. This is about.
Oh, okay.
I think we landed on it. It's been great.
gonna be.
Right now, oh, really? Okay, I thought I got it for everybody, okay, perfect. Yeah, well, this year, thank you for.
When I did this year on the single family.
Yep, we're good.
See how these are all. Just 10 to 13, this year it was. Most of the single families would be in. Right, because I mean, it's not gonna be, it has to be 1 day, right? It's not gonna be between 8 and 9, so it's gonna be in, yeah, it's gonna be like 9. So the median's gonna be.
I'm in a single family.
Oh, this was the percentage of single family, 67% this year.
I know, it's painful, and if my voice hurts, you're getting serious.
I'm just surprised.
But you-
The city is.
I mean, it's
I
odd
had
that
the exact same thought.
that's
I thought,
yeah,
Very
no, it's so,
It's so like, we're gonna
would
get
have
a
sold in
school persuasive.
January, February, March, April. Yeah, but a lot of people did. See, no one, I mean, people knew it was coming. And so at least some people, if you were a realtor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay, I think we just give, we set the term for us. Oh, okay, good.
So,
Okay, take it away.
yeah, this is the first draft on a mission statement for our official GS committee. And it's in front of you to advise the Santa Monica City Council on the appropriate and effective use of Measure GS funds to address reducing homelessness and maintaining and increasing affordable housing and housing opportunities in the city of Santa Monica. Alon has
Yeah.
some comments.
I just
to
have,
start.
one question that I think we should talk about, which is this expression, reducing homelessness, and is the job to reduce homelessness or to prevent homelessness? This is the language of reducing homelessness. I'm wondering how much does that involve helping currently homeless individuals versus the front end support of before we enter into that? And I feel like we've had various discussions where we're not likely on the same place in terms of that role. So I just thought it'd be important to figure that out.
So I'm gonna call myself first. So I do think we ought to put this preventing, but I think we could have again reduced homelessness. But the reduction part that's legitimate within what we're doing is to the extent that we're creating new housing for formerly homeless individuals, so for example, which isn't always true, but sometimes is, more often is permanent supportive housing. And that is something that I think we want to do.
Not temporary supportive housing.
Whether it could be temporary is a different question, I have to look at that, but I don't know that we have deed restricted temporary housing, I'm sure what it is,
I
but.
took the language from the statute on homeless prevention. That's where I use that term.
The reducing homelessness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you took it from where?
the statute. And it probably should say, prevent.
I doubt it said reducing, but I don't have it right in front of me. I usually bring a copy.
Yeah, it says that, so, I mean, it says,
The title of this fund that we're spending money out of is the Homelessness Prevention and
Right.
Affordable Housing Fund.
Right.
So prevention,
it's preventing homelessness,
Yes.
rather than reducing.
I'm fine with that because the others subsumed in the other part. All I'm saying is if the committee was suggesting that they wanted to talk about reducing it, the part that would be relevant here is, which is part of our mission, is housing, we want to have affordable housing. Without any housing.
Well, yeah, that,
Homeless individuals.
but does that need to be explicit
Yeah, it says,
But I did, I'm sorry, I stepped on David, I think he wanted to.
it says guidelines to govern the homeless prevention and affordable housing fund, so.
I was just gonna say is, I understand that we're trying to prevent homelessness, but, if we reach our objective, which is building more housing, that would eliminate homeless, I mean, the end result should be to eliminate it. We shouldn't have any people, we should have enough housing for everyone to, right? Maybe I'm not understanding something, but that should be the end goal. I understand we have legalese name of this measure, but the end goal, to my understanding, is to eliminate homelessness. And once you've eliminated it, then you could work on the prevention that no more people, go back to being homeless. But then again, it goes back to your first point, is we gotta be able to build housing to put people in, or if we can take over housing, I don't know if that would be, sometimes there are opportunities where it's like run down or underdeveloped housing, maybe there's an opportunity
So I
to
just
take
want to
over that.
tie back to what this item is about, which is a sufficient statement. So you're advocating that we reduce it there. Okay, so now, Brianna.
So I think that our mission statement may change over time as progress is made in increasing affordable housing, homelessness. I think at this stage, preventing further homelessness, reducing current homelessness, I mean, I think those are two objectives that we need to focus on. Because we can prevent further homelessness, but then what are we doing about all these people who are currently homeless? We can't, I don't think at this point in time, we can move on without the other. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get to a point where all we're doing is preventing. Right now, we have a large number of people who are homeless in this city. They're past the prevention.
So, I guess there are two things. One is, as the data shows, there's no way we can eliminate it if we don't first cut off the number of new people going into the streets. That's been the problem, is that while we've been getting people off the streets, even more people going into the streets. That's been a snowballing problem. But secondly, my suggestion, listening to this would be, so why don't, if we said, use this measure GS funds to address preventing homelessness and maintaining increasing affordable housing and housing opportunities in the city of Santa Monica, including for those who are already homeless. Because that's the part where we're addressing homelessness, is in the second part where we're creating opportunities, including we want to create opportunities for people who are currently homeless, and that way be clear that what doesn't fall within the jurisdiction of this is other remediation efforts.
And I think that
people who are
that always that clause of opportunities for the currently homeless sense, because the intent was to say in drafting the statement was housing opportunities broadly, and adding to address the currently homeless in the city of Santa Monica would make sense to complete the clause. Excuse me, I do this for
sorry.
I say, excuse me, I do this for a living.
Okay, so go ahead, Bruce.
So, just for precision proper title, and I think oversight says a lot about what we're supposed to do. And then the way the chairman wrote it is there's this separate bucket, the homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund. So that's what's left over after you send the 10 million to the schools. So I think I can't remember what the city did, like in the city manager's report and all that kind of stuff in budgeting, but I think they should be able to identify when we talk about how much money is there and are we getting interest. That fund ought to be, we should say we're worrying about homeless prevention and affordable housing fund. Just because that's what it says in the statute. We're not,
As
we're
opposed to saying
doing the
measure
GS money
funds.
minus the 10 million. And the fund is supposed to be specifically identified. I mean, you shouldn't have to look for it. It was a little hard to find when I tried to look, what is the money? It should be easy to find. The city was so focused on the first year and the 18 million that was left. One of the documents I saw, it says, anyway, I just think if someone's trying to, the words that you use in the provision of what the fund is called, I think we should use those words. And then the other piece of it is, I think we should also be not only talking to city council, but urging transparency to the public at large on both the revenue and the expenditures from out of the homeless prevention affordable housing. And that's part of our oversight, is to like kick the city in the butt a little bit to say, you know, you really need to tell people what's going on. I mean, I got a thing from a realtor and it says all we know about Measure GS is that there was 18 million left over the first year. He doesn't know what's going on, and he said they haven't reported how they spent the money. So, and ULA does that pretty well. They can go on ULA dashboard and it shows how much money came in. But so to add to this and to be transparent to the public about revenue and expenditure.
Okay, so transparency is an explicit goal of our committee.
Well,
I guess I'm just asking.
I think last time we decided, at our last meeting, it's not, so what it says in the measure about transparency is that, you know, it's gonna be, the fund's gonna be audited annually by the city's auditors, outside auditors, and I'll report on it publicly to the city council and to this committee. So, while it's not technically in there, I mean, the mission statement, you
Yeah.
have to abide yourself.
Yeah.
That, what we voted on last time was to add for a work plan for this upcoming year, recommendations on transparency measures, so I think at least the 6 of us who were here at that meeting, or I don't remember what.
Yeah, and obviously,
Thought that that was something that was important, but whether it needs to be in the mission statement or not, I don't see any downside.
I'm fine with it being in there. I want to just be explicit, because my goal for having a mission statement is for when we have a question, when we're getting a proposal, and we're reviewing it, I want to review it against the mission statement. And so as long as we are clear about that, then that's gonna help us just have debate about whether or not it's meeting the criteria we're setting.
Well, I would think we keep going back to the statute for that.
My big question is, like, will we be funding things like transitional housing and homeless shelters? As opposed to, like, 'cause from what I've gathered from, it seems like the focus of the money is more on the inflow of folks into homelessness rather than bringing people from the back end that are already in that situation up into housing, which is its own problem. But is that the responsibility of these funds, is what I don't fully understand.
I've always read the measure to be that it is really explicitly about
I guess there are a couple of things. Here's maybe it's just because I'm a lawyer, but I was with Wade. Ultimately, the statute is what governs in some summary, 2 sentences. Mission statement for B is not going to be determined in the statute. I think if there are specific things like that, if we want to work on that, then we ought to identify what those are and come to some, we ought to discuss them, come to some resolution. So if that is, I mean, maybe we need to agendize for the next meeting. Do we think any of this money can go to new sandwich, call it, whatever? But I don't think it's accurate to say, so this was to do 2 things. One is create 3 things. It's create new affordable housing. That new affordable housing can easily be, it's for anybody, but include affordable housing for formerly homeless people. So I don't think it's fair to say there's no mandate. It has to be that as opposed to anything else. We certainly can make recommendations to city council that want to see some portion of it. We're on the housing commission, just as an example, there was actually, I don't know how much the city pays any attention to this, but no disrespect to anybody, and the city staff is gutted by pandemic, but at the time, we had a whole long discussion about, large family housing, smaller family housing, supportive housing for people with disabilities of various kinds, and homelessness housing. And I think what we ultimately made a lot of discussions about it, and we thought we need all of those. And therefore, we recommended at that time that they should be targeting approximately a quarter of each of those buckets. That's in somewhere in the housing trust fund plan, so whatever that was done for that. So we certainly can have that discussion. And that's one of the things that we as a committee can or can't recommend. I think we talk about how we want to spend the creation portion of the money. Everything else, like the 30% that's fine. That is for preventing and forming people who are currently housed. And there's another 20% which can go to other ways of preserving existing housing for people, units were that, and some of the things we were talking about as possibilities, like, if CCSM is a building and it's losing money and there's a risk that they're not going to be able to do it, on that 20%, someone going to keep that building going is a legitimate way of preserving that. The micro grants could be, if it's targeted towards the right income groups in the thing, whatever. That's a good or bad expenditure. I'm not saying a question, but at least we can do that. So I think we ought to discuss what is it we think the mission statement should work should do, and once we come to an agreement on that, then we can do it as I'm hearing differently.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, no.
That may be the right.
This is the
You may be
conversation
right,
we
but
wanted
we
to
ought
have.
that we ought to have, and then if it is, if there are things that we've already identified that are ambiguous, we probably, we can do one of 2 things. We can either actually, in the abstract, make a decision about it, or we can wait until the city comes to us and asks us
Right now, there's no
to
offer.
do that. I don't know whether, Natalie, it's fine if you don't have a view on this, but would it be helpful, for example, whether anyone could go to whatever the individual housing is that the city's thinking about creating? Would it be helpful to know that in advance, what our view is on that, or is it a lot of effort over something that we never come about, we shouldn't do? But if it's helpful, then we can certainly do it.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to know. There might be interim housing that's, or transitional housing that's coming, so, I wouldn't spend a lot of time, but it would be helpful to know that if, whether or not that's an option.
So, so I'll call that in a second, but I do think people ought to express their views about what they think, what their mission statement is, whether it's some, I mean, I guess some people said that, what is the point?
decide as a committee, it's fine, all of the plethora of things you listed are all important, we all need to, resolve them. However, the more items we try to resolve, what ends up happening is you end up resolving nothing. So, in my personal opinion, I think we should concentrate on maybe one, maybe two things, because with the limited number of resources we have, that way you will make a much better impact. Whatever everyone decides on, you'll make a better impact if you choose two items on solving those two items the best that we can, versus if you have 5 items that you're divvied up everything across that you're trying to solve.
But for purposes of the mission statement, what does that translate to?
For purposes of the mission statement, I think it's fine with how it's, written. I just think that we have to understand.
Right now, this agenda item is about the mission statement, so let's stick to that, okay?
I mean, I don't want to speak for Alon, but I think we're happy to redraft based on the input from the committee and bring it to the next meeting for the discussion. To David's point, I think, and again, I build organizations all the time, and the other piece of this thing is a vision statement, and what you were talking about is a vision statement. What is our ideal outcome after our work? So I think Dave, you gave some pretty good suggestions about what that ideal outcome is. So, but let's do this first. And if the committee is willing, we might want to pursue a vision for what the committee sees the fruits of our labor over time.
If I may, I just wanted to add just insight to just as you all are thinking through the mission statement and the vision and just use of these funds. Measure GS funds are the most flexible funds that the city has. And there's also a lot of funds that are coming very quickly to the city that have very quick turnarounds. So as you're narrowing the mission and the vision, I also would just encourage this committee to also be mindful of the flexibility that the funds do have. And sometimes, sorry not to point to you, Commissioner, or committee members, like what we're seeing with the FFA program, for example, is, we have funding that we have to use by a certain amount of time. Yes, that has to be prioritized. So that just wanted to share, there's other funding that's coming that don't pigeonhole too much the Measure GS fund, because those are the most flexible funds that as a city we have.
Yeah, so, go ahead.
And so I think the key word is oversight. We're still on our learning curve, but at some point we're going to be the most knowledgeable people in the city on all of this. And to Natalie's point, we may say that obviously if there's more money coming in from other sources, we don't want to spend this money on it. We'd rather reallocate it. And that could be a comment that we make if we're ever making a public statement to the council. We've spent a lot of time understanding this, and one of your point on flexibility is, we'll use this money to address the problem. And if we think maybe there are other areas where it should be used on, but the statute doesn't let them, it restricts the council, but we can have our opinions of saying it would be great if it could be spent in this area or something.
I think if you read about the ballot initiative, it's pretty clearly stated in there what the mission.
Right, but I feel like the city council has a legal obligation to do what it says, and people can sue them if they don't. We're the oversight committee, and we get to have opinions that might be outside could say 5 years from now, it's not really working like intended, and maybe it could be adjusted in these ways or whatever. I mean, I think my view is, I just have, at the current level, I'm frustrated that they're not doing more. But, you know, the oversight committee really should have the freedom at some point to say, we've looked at all the different things, and it's possible for us to know as much as Natalie knows about what other funding sources. But let's say the state of California says we're gonna allocate money from the lottery to right to counsel. We might say, okay, this right to counsel purpose of this program isn't needed anymore, and we should think about ways of.
Bring us back to the mission statement.
But our mission, that's why I'm saying it's oversight for the measured GS funds. In addition to recommending to the council, it's general oversight of the goal of the measure and its effectiveness.
So I guess that the point that Renee was raising is, what are we gaining by not just making our mission statement what the statute says the role of this committee?
It's pretty specific.
We're gaining that we're.
Is it more than how many sentences is this?
The measure would establish an 11-member resident oversight committee to provide recommendations to the city council regarding guidelines for eligible expenditures, local priorities and preferences, award procedures, budgeting, program evaluation, and public reporting procedures. Before that, this measure allows the homelessness prevention and affordable housing fund to be used to provide ongoing or emergency income assistance, acquire and rehabilitate existing rental properties, as deed restricted affordable housing, create new deed restricted housing, and fund programs and services designed to preserve and improve affordable housing for low income households.
That's a general establishment of funds.
I agree that's what it's.
Yeah, that's very long.
No,
I agree that's what it says. I don't think that restricts me. I'm a resident of Santa Monica. I'm supposed to be doing oversight. I'm pissed that they're not spending the money, so I can publicly say you should spend the money, and that may not fit within what you just said. We're not restricted to say, oh, we can only make recommendations on how to spend the money. We can comment on the fact that it's taking a long time. We can comment on the fact that they're not making things public. I think that, to me, that falls under oversight, even if the statute doesn't say that. That's because it doesn't restrict us from providing the oversight that we think we need.
No, I'm not saying.
I think Amy wanted to.
Huh?
I'm not
Let's
saying
let,
it does.
Okay.
let's let
I
Amy.
guess I would just say, I guess another benefit statement is like if we ever get to the place where we have a web page that has a dashboard, right? It's nice to kind of have a concise, accessible description of what it is the committee's doing. Because I think Renee, you're right. Like that is the technical detail, but it's like a little obscure. So
I think it's also the mission statement of the living.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can change over time.
Yeah.
And then
Mark.
And to Milan's point, it needs to be, it's what we reflect our decisions against, and it needs to be general. And from Bruce's comments, I sort of added a clause that says, and to foster community transparency and impact of the use of the funds, homeless prevention. To basically say it's our responsibility to tell the community what is done.
Which isn't in the statute, but it's nice to
That's
have
not
that.
true. It says that we're supposed to recommend public reporting procedures to the city council.
I do think that's, if I'm not doing that, why am I an oversight committee? I have to be able to say, you guys, it's insane. You do this report on another tax, and they tell you everything in it, and they don't do it for this. It's insane. That's what in my view, it's just we're to provide general oversight on measured GS.
I mean, I personally, no offense to
You're-
here.
you're-
I don't think mission statements make any difference to you. So anything you guys want to put in here, I'll be fine with. Ultimately, I'm gonna be measuring any vote I take here
Sure.
against what the statute says. I completely agree with you, Bruce, that, you know, we can make any comments or public we want or reporting, but it is in their public reporting is one of the express things that Renee read that we're supposed to make recommendations about. So whether we pick that, guys, and these other wording, I personally don't care.
Well, I think
And I don't think we're gonna resolve tonight, so I think you should join the
I
subcommittee.
think the key word is oversight. We're supposed to provide oversight. That's in our title.
I like Mark's idea, he'll bring back a revised version that will get ahead of the meeting on what.
Well, and I,
Discussion.
fears we got.
We'll leave you out of it, Michael, so don't worry. We'll give you
No,
the
I'm
final
just
one.
laying down, I do not agree if we're taking on what a role of mission statement, this does not bind us in anything. It's a nice thing for public reporting, that's basically
And
what it is.
cohesion, I think is important.
Group cohesion, whatever it is, anything you want to put in there is,
All right, we'll
I've heard
discuss it at the
tonight,
next meeting.
is all fine, so.
Thanks,
Okay.
I appreciate everyone's input, it was good talk.
Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're now on to 13B, discussion of possible action, and new members to establish subcommittees. Anybody who wants to join any of the existing subcommittees?
Just talk my way into the mission.
You don't have to.
No, they took your input.
We took your input, you don't have to.
Right.
I think for now I'm fine.
Okay, so let's move on then to C, discussion of possible action of nominating a Measure GS President Oversight Committee member to sit on review panel, helping provide rankings for spending proposals. So can you explain to us a little,
Yes,
remind us what this is about?
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I was also looking at it, trying. So for, as you all know, the city's doing the request for proposals for the flexible financial assistance to the FFA program. We had confirmed with procurement that a member of this committee can sit on that review panel, and help providing the rankings for those proposals. So, wanted to bring that opportunity forward.
I
But
would nominate Bruce.
I was gonna say, Bruce, are you willing to do this? Yes?
Are we gonna see the RFP? It's in procurement.
It's in procurement right now, so you will.
Well, eventually. Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we nominate Bruce Russell as our representative on this committee.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So now up to
D.
Did you vote?
E.
I'm accused.
Right, okay, so Wade, this is on the agenda. Could you ask-
Well,
Hang on, let me read the item, just for the
Okay.
official record here. So it's discussion on homeless prevention and intervention, manager duties being outside of the Measure GS statute. Okay, maybe you can take it away.
Well, I am
What do you
glad
want to
that-
say about this?
I'm glad that I saw that there was some agreement on this. So what do we do? Do we tell the,
Now, this is an agreement to put it on the agenda. What is it you're proposing that we do?
well,
I think you achieved it already with your questions to the city manager and his promise that you would address it.
I'm sorry, I don't know
You
what
would
this
address-
is yet. What is the this?
this is what we were speaking about earlier about the manager of HPI, Allison Crosby.
Crosby.
She was funded by the Measure GS fund.
Oh, okay, that's what this is.
And,
Okay,
and
yes.
I was glad to see some agreement about this, and that we need to say that's not what this fund is for, and that I would love to see them take her position, take the manager's position and have the manager work for Measure GS since it's funded by since the position is funded by Measure GS, and have that position focus on Measure GS and the needs and what we want to achieve, and help us achieve it and report back to us. But if that's not feasible, then the other ideas were funding part of what this manager does and not the other part. But as I see it, most of what this manager does is that the?
No, this is
that's
something
not
else,
the
this is
breakdown.
something else. And I think it's really-
There's a graph with the three different,
Yeah.
and most of what this manager does is outside of Measure GS.
I think we communicated that to the city manager, and he committed that, yes, if she's working on other things, we're not gonna allocate it to GS. But-
And then we'll
But it's
charge
already
it
been
out
allocated.
again, 3
It's already
years.
got-
That he can change it, I mean, it's not.
Get it back, okay?
Okay.
Every dollar spent, retro, for 3 years.
But, I mean, we could be using GS money to, pay for something now at least. But I think the point is, you shouldn't say, okay, this is the GS position, and then have them do other things. And I think you made that clearly to the city manager, he understood.
Well, okay, so what do we do?
Okay, so now we want to go back to.
I guess I'm just looking back on, I just want to say, Wade, I think that however this issue got raised, I think it is a really good and important issue, right? That idea is that the administrative dollars are going to staff that are working on GS-funded programs and activities. And I guess I'm looking at old material that is suggesting that there's going to be 3 positions in HBI.
There's 2 others, but they are not.
Right.
So the senior HPI analyst position is going to be overseeing the contract for the Rights Council program. And then the housing navigator position will be in the housing division. And that will be doing housing navigation services for voucher holders to ensure that they're maintaining housing and also finding housing. So as that's really a good challenge in utilizing vouchers.
So that's interesting, right? Because that sounds like that staff person is going to be working on programs and activities that are aligned with Measure GS, but that aren't necessarily Measure GS funded programs.
So now that I understand what this measure is, I'm going to do the next one. But it seems to me there are 2 things here. So one is, which I think we sort of informally said, but I think it would behoove us to make a motion, a formal statement from this committee, that any administrative funds that are spent go to people working on, for the work that they're doing on GS funded programs. We can make that statement. I think it's been communicated, but we ought to make it a formal position of the committee. I think that Natalie, that we can probably just make the motion and communicate it through Natalie. I don't think we have to do anything more than that. I think we already have just said that was the formal position of the committee. So that's one thing that we ought to come to some resolution on. The other thing that this is why I was confused, and you mentioned, but I'm not sure it's on this agenda or not, is this idea about having somebody whose only role is to work on the GS stuff and something that's a separate issue, which I think we gotta come to a resolution on. If it's within this agenda item, we should do it separately. So that's my view. I think David was next, but Bruce, I can see you're getting ready to say something, so David was next.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I agree with your point that I understand that we brought it up to Oliver about the whoever this person is just to make sure that their hours and how it's split up, just to know and follow up on our next meeting that this was looked into and it's appropriately allocated and we're getting charged for their contribution, whatever they're making to measure GS. And just to follow up with that next meeting, just to make sure that it got done and, we can put a check mark on it.
And my impression of what happened is that Heather writes something to the city council, because people maybe said, what are you doing to spend the GS money? So she comes up with this memo, she writes it to the city council in March, and they adopt it. And that included the 3 positions. Now, whether it actually makes sense to have 3 positions, or should be 2 positions, or it should be different, there's gonna be a new head of Housing Human Service Daleen coming in. And I think we should just put on the agenda for the next meeting, just a general discussion of using GS funds to fund staff within the city. Just so we continue to monitor this and make sure that it makes sense. And make sure Aileen knows when she comes that she would have our backing if she decided to adjust or make recommendations, adjusting the idea of having the 3 positions and where they should be. Because as Oliver keeps saying, I'm trying to get this whole mechanism to work in a sensible way. And I could understand that you work for the city, you figure, well, the city council passed this, and they said we should hire these 3 people, but I don't think that's really what happened in March. I think it was a recommendation, the city council said yes, but they entertained a different idea that says maybe it shouldn't be this way. But in any event, I just think Wade raised the point, I think Oliver understands it, and said you're only gonna be allocated a percentage of the expense for working on actual GS. Which may be a better way of doing things as opposed to having one person who's 100% GS person saying, no, there are going to be 2 people that are 50% GS, because we want to harmonize what we're doing with all the other things that are going on.
And so I also just want to make sure the committee is aware that there's a lot of city staff time that's not currently being charged or used to measure GS. My time isn't being, applied towards measure GS. Thomas's time, finance's time, doing RFP, there's been multiple staff, procurement, and so that's just something to think about of, yes, there's only 1 position that's being 100% funded, but is that equal to all of these other staff members that are working on these different components across the city for all of the work that's been done?
And the logistical.
And the, yeah.
But very, you get a salary, right? You're not paid by the hour.
But I'm not paid, correct, but I'm not
Okay,
paid.
so the city was paying their salary beforehand, and they would be paying the position for Thomas and everybody else. That was the whole point of that provision, was that things that the city's already paying for, we're not gonna start funding with GS funds, it's only for new stuff. So the fact that if there was somebody new being hired or something like that, that would be a legitimate charge to the GS fund. But things that are just, because the city's business now includes this, that doesn't qualify because there's no marginal cost to the city.
But wouldn't it take away from other work that we would have been doing?
That's not what this was written to do. I mean, if you want to have somebody separate to do the GS work, and do the other, then you can do it. But anyway, that's my reaction. Go ahead.
Well,
I think we can do.
If our mission statement says that, we are to advise
So I think at some point, we're in the weeds, so we can just agendize it for the next time to discuss
It's not
staffing.
an agenda, so this is what the agenda item is.
Yeah, this is
It's
the.
on the agenda.
I want it on the agenda for the next meeting, because Wade got the city manager to say, I get it, I'll fix it, so we should just have a follow-up at the next meeting of what's going on. Because it's not acceptable to me, even though, Michael, I would have more happily pay for Natalie's time than hire a new person who's not working on GS stuff. That seems insane to me. I mean, if Allison is being 100% paid by GS, she should be at every meeting. She is the GS person. The tax dollars that are raised by this are paying Allison's salary. If they're gonna allocate it 100%, she should be at every meeting and know what's going on here. Doesn't make any sense to not do that. I'm much happier to what Oliver said is, I get it, if she's working on non-GS stuff, I'm not gonna use GS money for that. That's what I heard her say.
Right, and I think, so, going back for a second, I thought what I was proposing was that we not weigh in on any particular thing, just make the comment you made, I made, Wade made, David made, just make it a formal statement of the committee that Measure GS administrative funds are for work that's done on Measure GS things. That, you know, we can get into, if the city wants to propose a portion of Natalie and salary get paid by the GS commission, we can look at that and we can get into these issues about that, because it's all related. I mean, as you say, people are looking to use the money for all of these things. They're all ideas that the city has anyway, so working on them just because the bucket ends up being there, but we don't have to decide that. I thought what we ought to do.
I just want it on the agenda for the next meeting so we can discuss it again at the next meeting without someone saying it's not on the agenda.
I just want to understand what this is for the next meeting.
So I will read what was adopted by the council in March, what they said they were gonna do, what they adopted, the three positions and what they are.
You wanna
And
talk
then
about specifics.
we can ask Natalie, she's just telling us there's this position, we're gonna fill it, where there's this position, we filled the Allison thing, and we can then adopt something that says, taking into account what the city council did, what we understand is going on, we wanna make sure that you're not spending the GS money on people who are not working on GS.
I guess where I'm coming from, which we may have a disagreement on. Okay, yeah, is that, to me, a general statement about how measured money is supposed to be spent is different from the question of whether in a particular instance it's actually being done correctly or not. I just thought we ought to have.
If they took GS money and bought Cadillacs for every member of the city council, we would have the ability to say, we think that's not correct.
Bruce, I'm talking about something different. I'm gonna make a motion right now, okay? My motion is, and then we can either second or not, and then we can discuss it, is that the GS committee, formally conveys its view that administrative money that's paid, out of the GS fund can only go for work that's on GS, projects.
I second it.
Okay, so now we can have this, which is, to me, this is just a discussion. Then we should agendize your specific thing about these specific projects and what the city council does.
So I would propose that we vote on, this is my feeling, this would be the first thing we've ever done as a committee. I would propose that we put it on the January 12th meeting and make sure that because this would go to the city council and we would say, this is our committee speaking. I'd just like to think about it more between now and the 12th. And I'm not opposed to
Just to
the
be clear,
concept.
I may be fine with that, but I wasn't proposing that we send it to the city council. I thought if we took that position, Ally knows it, the city manager knows it, but it's been our official position. Then if we thought that the staff were to start violating that or whatever, then we would say something to the city
I oppose
council.
it myself personally, but.
Oppose having a motion.
Well, I oppose, the view that that the administrative money has to be overseeing GS money. I feel like if they're GS aligned goals like to piece out hours of time is a complete waste of their time and money.
I don't agree with statutes running by.
We have a motion on the
But
floor.
Mark was.
We have a motion on the floor.
So we're discussing the motion.
We're discussing.
Yeah, so,
We have-
so my comment is that, the way governance works is that we're a policy body. And the city is the operations portion. So the only comment that I would make to the motion is that we're asking the city to tell us what it takes from the city staff perspective to manage the GS activities.
Sorry, I'm not 100% sure.
So we're not saying we want this person, this person, this person. We're saying, city, you were going to tell us what it takes to manage the GS activities.
Yeah.
And we're going to reflect back and say that makes sense to us or it doesn't make sense to us. But I just want to steer us away from recommending particular positions and just keep it to making sure that GS money is used to support GS activities.
Amy's next.
I'm gonna let Wade
Or you.
speak.
I know.
I'm gonna let Wade speak first. 'Cause he needs to-
Okay, Wade speaking first. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Milan, but we've had so many discussions about what Measure GS does not cover, and some of these programs are obviously not covered by Measure GS unless we're expanding it, and then I would like us to be a part of more of these programs that are going on with the city, and I've been told that we're not supposed to deal with those. So figuring out which programs we will deal with and not deal with as we go along, that's great. But right now, we know that the only money that's been used by this fund is to hire somebody who is working outside of what so far we have decided Measure GS should be funding. And until maybe we should just table this until, so we can have more
So
discussion.
Wait, I thought it was next.
Well, except that I'm going to have to withdraw the motion and ask that we continue it to next time, because it's already 8:45. We have a lot of disagreement about this. I know at least I'm getting tired, and the like, and I don't think we'll lose anything from doing what I'm talking about. Maybe we could write it out beforehand and have an agenda, and we can think about it
I'm
beforehand.
gonna take the 2 seconds though to say
No,
that.
no, you can still go.
I think these ideas that Renee and Milan have raised are really helpful ideas for us to think about, because again, is it just GS funded programs that the administrative dollars should be going to, or is it aligned programs? And I'm not sure the statute is that explicit, and maybe that is a consideration, but the housing navigator, right, that's not a GS funded program, but it's supporting homelessness prevention, it's supporting, restoration and things like that.
Renee?
So I think along those lines, I think we can't really be effective if we separate all of this out, because it's all connected. And also, I would like to know what the homelessness prevention, intervention, management meetings are before I decide to go outside of this committee's.
As I said, I think there are two different issues here. The motion, which is not with us, so we can do this in January, and people have more time to think about it. Statute. But with a generic statement about what we think money's appropriately used for.